For him, it was all about, let's turn on the light.
Right.
Not because that's somehow a denial of, or a repression of, or a suppression of, or a bypass of the darkness, but because when the light is on and you can see, there's no more reason to process your fear of a snake that you now realize is a rope to begin with.
Right. Peace and riches blessings. I am Michael B. Beckwith, the host of Take Back Your Mind. Peace and radical blessings to all of you, and welcome to Take Back Your Mind, a podcast that is about us having dominion over our own attention. So we take back our mind and not allow for the debris and the sea of mental garbage that is spinning around us in the world of effects to have unduly influence over our perception, which determines thought forms and ultimately determines our experience. No, we are here to take back our mind, not to fall prey to the status quo, but to realize that as luminous, eternal beings, we have incarnated to break out of the confines of the social milieu if it's not in harmony with the fundamental harmony of the universe, and to bring forth our gifts, our talents, expand our capacity for cosmic energy to express that we make a mighty difference on the planet, vibrationally and otherwise, at this time in human history and beyond. Later on in the program, in the podcast, I will have with me Sadhviji. At that particular time, she'll be with me in person. I'll give you a full introduction of her, and we'll have a most beautiful conversation. She's a friend, a colleague, and a longtime collaborator on wonderful events such as the International Yoga Festival. So we'll be with her. She'll be arriving shortly. Now, right now, we'll begin with the life question of the week. This is from Becca. She said, if one has tried everything to bring forth a dream that hasn't happened, how do we know when to surrender to a greater plan, in quotes, and put it down and not blame and shame ourselves for not manifesting the dream we wanted? Here's why I ask. I have a 20-year meditation practice, a daily Kundalini practitioner. I've had so many miracles in my life as I align more and more with the will of God. But I have not been able to bring a baby into the world. After 7 pregnancy losses and countless attempts to create a family, I'm in the phase of acceptance. But how do I accept this as God's will and not my own failure? And when do I know that enough is enough in terms of trying to have a child? This is a very important question, and it's two-pronged. Let's start with the first part of your question. How do we know when to surrender to a greater plan and to put it down and not blame and shame ourselves for not manifesting the miracle we wanted? So one of the things that I teach in the life visioning process is to ask a question. What is it that's trying to emerge in my life? What is God's idea? And of course, God is not separate from us. We have emerged from the presence of God. So our life is the presence of God personified as an individual, distinct expression of infinite potential. So we are what we would call God in the flesh, so to speak. We're not all that God is, but all that we are is God. That's a whole other dynamic we can get into. So when we ask the question, what is God's idea of itself as us, we start to get intimations from the spirit within as to what our next steps are, what's trying to emerge, and we begin to be able to tell the difference between what is our soul dharma, what is what we're trying to bring forth, as opposed to what we think we should be doing based on the world's expectation of us, based on our parents, our society's expectation on us. We begin to see that more and more clearly. We begin to cultivate our spiritual faculty to catch what's trying to emerge within us that's beyond what society wants from us. Now, in your particular case, you want to have a baby. You want to have a family. And so after 7 pregnancy attempts to create a family, you're saying you're at a phase of acceptance that maybe this is not what you're to do. Now, one, it doesn't mean you're not to have a family. I don't know if you have done all the necessary work with the body temple. You probably have to check with your health professionals to see that your body is strong enough and capable enough to hold a child. You have the proper nutrition, exercise, minerals. I mean, you're a Kundalini meditation practitioner. You probably have done all of that. I know in today's age, many people are having surrogate, people carrying the seed and the egg in another person's body. I have a friend that just did that for somebody because it seemed like the mother's body wasn't able to carry a baby to full term. So they did surrogate. There are other people who have adopted children. There's so many children in the world that need parents. You know, so there's other ways of having, becoming a mother, so to speak, without necessarily carrying a baby to full term. So these are things to think about. And so that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is that since you are a 20-year meditation practitioner, why don't you add a little bit of the life visioning process and just ask, you know, what are my next steps in having an extension of my family? And begin to hear from the depth of your being intuitively, what are those next steps to having a family? See what your intuition tells you. See what the spirit of the living God is trying to tell you about how to extend your family. Perhaps it might be surrogate. Perhaps it may be adoption. Perhaps you might hear, try again. I hope that assists you. We're holding you in prayer. Now, if there's anyone else out there who wants a little bit of spiritual insight on finances, health, life purpose, relationships, email me at podcast@michaelbeckwith.com, and I'll see what comes up in terms of the answer to these questions. Becca, I hope this has served you, and perhaps it has served others as well. We will bring forth Sadhviji in just a moment. Peace and blessings, and welcome back to Take Back Your Mind. As I said earlier, I have a friend of mine with me today, and she's here with me in person. I said Sadhvi was going to be with us, but if you don't know who she is, let me break it down for you. Sadhvi Bhagavati Saraswati. She's a PhD as a renowned spiritual leader and motivational speaker based in Rishikesh, India. I was there with her recently. She's the author of the best-selling memoir, Hollywood to the Himalayas, a journey of healing and transformation. I have the book right here. Originally from Los Angeles and a graduate of Stanford University, Sadhviji has been ordained into the Sacred Order of Sannyas by her guru, His Holiness Puji Swami Chetanand Saraswatiji, and has been living in Paramath Niketan Ashram for the past 25 years. She is the Secretary General of the Global Interfaith WASH Alliance, which is dedicated to clean water, sanitation, and hygiene. She's president of Divine Shakti Foundation and runs free schools, vocational training programs, and empowerment programs. And she serves on the United Nations Advisory Council on Religion, as well as the steering committees of the International Partnership for Religion and Sustainable Development, and the moral imperative to end extreme poverty. And Sadhviji was given, check this out, the Lifetime Achievement Award by President Biden for her longtime commitment to volunteer service. Talking about a Lifetime Achievement Award, and she's just getting started. Welcome, beloved friend. First of all, she's a friend of mine, a colleague. We've known each other for a number of years. At her behest and her invitation, I've been a speaker a couple of times at the International Yoga Festival there in Rishikesh, of which she is one of the producers of this powerful festival. It's more than a festival. It's a gathering of people from all around the world who obviously practice yoga and meditation for the transformation of their life and to be a beneficial presence on the planet. And she invited me there many times, and finally I said yes a few years ago, and it's permanently on my calendar for years to come. And welcome.
Thank you so much, Reverend Michael. It's such a joy to be with you.
Always, always. You were at Agape recently, the last time you were in Los Angeles.
Yes, I was. I always try to come whenever I'm in LA, and to be with you is just such a gift and such a joy and such a blessing.
And to be with our special guru is always a blessing as well. He carries such a powerful vibration, as of you, and your dedication to service to humanity is magnificent. I'm always inspired. But we're going to get into that in a moment. I want you to bring to the audience your personal journey to a degree. I mean, some of it is detailed in your book, From Hollywood to the Himalayas, but you weren't always there in India for the last 25 years. You had a life before that. Something happened in your life, and now you're dedicated yourself to selfless service.
Sure. It's, my ego would love to say, oh, I recognized the shallowness of this material world, and I prayed to God to give me something deeper, to show me something deeper, to bring me a guru. My ego would love to say that. It's just not true. I grew up here in LA, quite literally in Hollywood, hence the Hollywood to Himalayas name. I graduated from Stanford University. I had really all of that which we're taught is what you need to be happy. The financial success, the opportunity, the privilege, all of these things, I had them. And if you looked at me from the outside, you would have said, this girl's got everything.
Right.
And yet on the inside, there were two different streams of not everything. Mm-hmm. One being your just kind of general sense of, we all know money doesn't buy happiness.
Right.
We know titles and degrees and possessions do not actually give us what we're looking for in life. So on the one hand, there was a sense that I think everyone experiences at some point, which is, oh my God, I've been acquiring and attaining and achieving and striving, thinking that if I just buy this or own that or achieve this or jump through this hoop, then I'll be happy. And we do all of that, and yet we're not actually any more happy, or maybe we were for 10 minutes and then it's over. And so that was on the one hand. On the other stream was also very personal issues, which had to do with childhood trauma.
Right,
I had been, as you know, severely sexually abused in early childhood and then abandoned by my biological father, which had ramifications into my teenage years, into my early 20s. I had developed a very, very severe eating disorder. I was bulimic, in and out of hospitals. And so in addition to the general sense of all this money and success doesn't bring happiness, I also had my personal stream of struggles and suffering and trauma. And by the time I was 25, I had gotten to a point where through a lot of work, a lot of therapy, a lot of hospitals, a lot of different types of work, I got to a place where I felt like I was really successfully managing my life. I was managing.
That's a good phrase right there. Successfully managing your life.
And I thought that was the goal. To me, at that point in life, that was the goal, was thou shalt learn to manage thy life, right? And my emotions, my meals, my food, my relationships, my schoolwork. Like, I had everything managed.
Right.
And I thought, this is as good
this is it.
as it gets. Like, everyone I know was managing their lives, some managing well, some not managing so well. But it seemed like that was really what life was about. No one had ever said to me, hey, there's something beyond this. Mm-hmm. Hey, you actually can be free. Yes, managing your life is better than not managing it, but that's not the highest goal. You actually can be free of the pain, the anger, the suffering, the addiction. And beyond that, you can be free of this story that you tell yourself, this identification of this is who I am.
Right.
No one ever told me that.
Right.
So I go off to India at 25 with a backpack, not even because I had this vision, as I said, my ego would love to say, but not because I had this vision of something higher or deeper, but because I was a very, very strict, passionate vegetarian. And having traveled through a lot of the world as a stressed out vegetarian, I knew that India would be a really easy and happy place to eat.
Right.
And because I was married and my husband really wanted to go to India, and to acquiesce to that seemed like the right thing to do. So we get to India. I took a 1-semester break from my PhD program. I was in the middle of getting a PhD in pediatric neuropsychology, and get to India, and Rishikesh was the very first place we went. There was no Google at that time. We had a 500-page Lonely Planet guidebook that I opened and said, Rishikesh. I mean, it was just like that.
Wow.
Just like that, sitting over a cup of coffee in Delhi, I open it and say, Rishikesh. Show up in Rishikesh, and I stand on the banks of this river that I didn't even know was holy. The Ganga River, the Ganges River. I didn't even know this river was sacred. I just knew it was a river, and I was hot and I was tired, and we had traveled in from Delhi. And I go to stand on the banks of the river to put my feet in and freshen up. And suddenly I had this experience of being in the presence of the divine. But a presence that didn't have any borders or boundary. There was no place the presence began and ended. It was nothing but divine presence. It began when I looked out over this sacred river, but it ended up permeating through everything. And then it didn't matter whether I was looking at the river or the steps or a telephone pole or a tree or children. It was just nothing but the divine. And it wasn't separate from me either. And suddenly there I was. I, who in my self-identification was an abuse survivor and bulimic and suffering and struggling with depression and anxiety and this and that. I, who had all of these stories, suddenly none of that existed. And it was just this expanding infinite spaciousness. And I know that expanding and infinite seem like they don't go together, but
yes,
that's what the experience is.
It's paradoxical.
It's paradoxical, and yet that's exactly the way it feels.
Yes.
Is it's infinite, and yet it keeps expanding.
Yes.
And I was not separate from it. And there was nothing wrong with me, and there was nothing I lacked, and there was no place I began and the divine, I ended and the divine began.
Right.
And I burst into tears, and that was it. And I mean, the rest just rippled from there. But in September, that'll be 27 years from now.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then from there, two things happened. One, Guruji.
Yes.
made sure you went back and finished your PhD, even though you were probably ready to stay there the rest of your life. And two, the human marriage dissolved.
Yes.
Because you were going in a whole nother direction.
Yes.
And he was going in another direction. So that you went back and finished your PhD.
Yes, so much happened. You know, in the week to 10 days right after that moment, I had this series of events happen. People talk about the touch of God. And I always say I was hit over the head with a baseball bat. Maybe the divine had tried to touch me before that. Maybe there had been gentle, subtle touches, but I missed them entirely. And the universe had to just literally come with a baseball bat and whack me. And I literally found myself hearing a voice. And I wasn't a mystic. I was an academic. I was a scientist. I was a straight A student.
Right.
And here I was hearing a voice as I walked through Parmarth Niketan, the ashram that I now live in.
Right.
And I hear a voice that says, "You must stay here." And I'm like, who said that? And there was no one.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, all right, if there's no one, then obviously I didn't hear a voice. And I keep walking, and I hear it again.
Yes.
So I'm hearing voices. Then after I finally meet Puja Swamiji, Guruji, I'm walking out, thinking I'm going to walk out of the ashram. We were headed up into the mountains, my husband and I, thinking we're going to go. And my feet literally get stuck to the ground of the ashram. I literally cannot pick my feet up off the ground. So I had a series of these sorts of things happen that were the universe hitting me over the head with a lot of love, but an undeniable strength of thou shalt not ignore this. This is happening. There is nowhere to run. There is nowhere to go. This is now happening to your life. And so, yes, I stayed. And yes, I did eventually finish the PhD. Although I'll tell you, the universe was so extraordinarily on my side, because what happened, this was 96.
Right.
And I remember when I first told people at the university that, well, I'm moving to India, but don't worry, I'll email you. They laughed. Like, oh, yeah,
this is frivolous.
You're gonna email us? Email was, it was a game at that point.
Yeah, it was just starting.
You hit and it would say, you've got mail.
Right.
You'd sign in, it would say, you've got mail. The idea of email being a legitimate means of communication was unheard of.
Right.
But fast forward 6, 7, 8 years, and suddenly the internet became a very legitimate means of communication and submitting things. So I actually ended up able to do almost all of it from Rishikesh, which ended up being such a gift. And yeah, the marriage dissolved. It's another story, but
imagine he was surprised.
He was.
You guys were going camping.
He was surprised. Although, I'll tell you, he was really on a deep spiritual quest and had been really looking for a guru. And when I first had the experience, for me, it was an experience only of expansion and openness.
Right.
There was no sense at all of this instead of my marriage.
Right.
I thought, oh my God, he's going to be so happy. I have found the ashram and the guru. Unfortunately, that was not the direction that his path was going in.
Right.
But, throughout our lives, things arise and they serve a karmic purpose, and we walk through things, and some things we walk through for a long time, some we walk through for short times. And it was really clear that the karmic purpose of that coming together for me was to bring me to Rishikesh.
Right.
For him was to give him different experiences.
Right.
But that it really had served its karmic purpose, because I otherwise never would have gone to India.
Right.
And that through him, I was brought to India. And he's doing beautifully. He's married. He has 2 beautiful children. So it all worked out. It just was no longer meant to be part of the picture. I was meant to take monastic vows of renunciation and celibacy and become a nun.
Right, right. You know, when I was listening to your walking through the ashram and hearing that voice, it's very similar to what happened with me. I was at a meeting, and I was a part of a group to change the world by any means necessary. And I just finished attending Morehouse College, and I'd moved to LA to complete school here. And I was sitting in the meeting, and the voice said, it sounded like it was back behind me, said, if you were to take over the world tomorrow, would the world be any different? So I looked around to see who said it, but there was no one there. So the meeting continued. And the next time I heard the voice, it was coming from within me. If you were to take over the world tomorrow, would the world be any different? So I looked around the room, and I could see the pathology. We had an ideology, but I could see the pathology of the people in the room. This person was territorial. This person was possessive. This person always had to be right. I could look, and I said, wow, if we were to take over the world, it wouldn't be any different. And so after that meeting, I never went back. The very next week, somebody in that meeting shot somebody.
Oh, my God.
They got into an argument, and they shot somebody. But I wasn't there to be a part of that whole legal thing that unfolded. I enrolled in USC after that, and the experience is heightened. I was in the psychobiology department. I was on the track to go to med school. And so all of this was woo-woo to me. I thought I was losing my mind, and eventually it burst into an awareness similar to what you've described, to the point where even a piece of lint was divine. Everything, it exploded. I died and I woke up. Everything was divine, everything. And the expansion and the sense of connection. And I never could get back in that box again. I couldn't get back in. I lost all my friends. They all thought I freaked out. So I'm very aware of those kind of openings.
And it's so exquisite. You talk about losing your mind, and for me it was such a gift, because I see one of the challenges that so many people who come onto a spiritual path face is how much they already know.
Yes, we have to unlearn a lot, don't we?
And for me, it was such a gift to literally have it all just, because prior to that, I thought I knew a lot.
Yeah. I mean, you were an academician.
I was just going to say, here I was a Stanford grad. I had gotten straight A's. I was getting straight A's in a PhD program. Yeah. I was smart. I knew stuff. And I knew a lot about myself. I used to talk about how I would kind of run circles around my therapists and how I knew so much more than they did, as though that was something to be proud of. And I would have told you that I knew everything about myself, everything about what was wrong with me. Not that that was helping me heal, but I had fully mastered the pathology.
But that's a good point. You can discover all the things that are wrong with you, but it's not going to heal you.
Exactly. And that's exactly where I was. And I remember Swamiji saying to me in the beginning, when I was talking to him about my pathology and what was wrong with me, and he looked at me and he said, you people in the West sit around in a dark room and you talk about how dark it is, what it feels like to be in the dark, why it might be dark, what the molecules of darkness are made of, where the darkness has come from. He said, and in the East, we go like this on the wall looking for a light switch. And for him, it was all about, let's turn on the light.
Right.
Not because that's somehow a denial of or a repression of or a suppression of or a bypass of the darkness, but because when the light is on and you can see, there's no more reason to process your fear of a snake that you now realize is a rope to begin with.
Right. Absolutely. It's interesting now that consciousness has crept into the West now with transpersonal psychology, spiritual therapists, where they're focusing more on what's real about a person, not denying any experience a person has had, not denying the effects of the trauma, but really focusing on what is real and eternal about the individual, coaxing that into awareness, which then assists in the dissolution of the limited perception of who one is. All the things you thought you were, which were of the ego and the personality, were temporary constructs. Yeah. But the expansion is who you really are.
I remember the awareness that there was not a part of me at that moment when I was 25 that actually had been abused.
This is so important. I want you to catch this, because she's not denying something, but she's really giving you a truth here.
At 25, if you had said to me, "Who are you?" And I felt comfortable and safe and okay to be vulnerable, I would have given you my story of here's how I had been abused, here's how I had been abandoned, here's what I had been through, and here's... Right. And yet, if you had said to me, "Show me. Show me the part of you that was abused. Right. Show me the she who was abandoned." Right. There was no longer a cell of my being at 25 that had been hurt. Right. I mean, we know the cells of our body are constantly regenerating, whether a matter of days for the skin or a matter of several years for the internal organs. But I mean, anyway, it wasn't my liver and kidneys that were abused anyway. Right. But even if they had been, 7-8 years later, those cells have all regenerated. But I was carrying in my mind this identification that no longer actually had any bearing in reality. And that doesn't mean that it wasn't horrible what had happened. It just meant that it no longer was the reality of the present moment. And that if I was going to be here, I had to be here with what is here. And that no longer was here. Right. And it was an extraordinary awareness of, oh my God. Yes. That isn't actually me.
Right. Right. Because there's a part of us that's never been hurt, harmed, or endangered in any way. Yeah. And that is what you discovered at the banks of the Ganga. Yeah. There was a part of you, the real you, that can't be touched by time or experience. And that's not a figment of our imagination. It's not hypothesis. It's not just a theory. It's not just a belief. You actually had direct encounter with that which is real, which allows you now to be a presence in other people's lives. Because when you look at people, or you associate with the girls that you're working with at the schools, you're actually looking for and looking at that which is real. And they vibrate with it. They see what they begin to see what you're looking at. It's real spiritual therapy. Yeah.
It's such a gift. I remember when Swamiji first told me to let it go. I had been there, God, I don't know, 3-4 days maybe, very beginning.
Really, this is right at the beginning?
Right at the very beginning. It was actually the very first time that I had a moment to talk to him one-on-one. He would give these open darshans twice a day for an hour a day, and people would come in for darshan and blessings, and I would just sit there. And this one day, there were still a few minutes left on the hour, and people had gone. And so I asked him about fear. Because fear and stress had always been a really big aspect of my life. I was kind of living in this low grade and, of course, sometimes high grade stress.
Which has been normalized.
Absolutely.
Right now with all of the advent of viruses and wars and so much that we get bombarded with by the media.
Yeah.
People live in that right now.
And it's so sad because, as an aside about that, because it's become normalized.
Yeah.
People have stopped mostly even trying to do something to change it. We've just accepted it.
Right.
How are you? Oh my God, I'm so stressed. Yeah, me too. Oh my God, I'm so stressed.
Right.
Okay, and then
that's the
we
conversation.
Just accept that.
Mm-hmm.
And so people have stopped even trying to figure out how to not be stressed. And regardless of how rampant the epidemic or pandemic of stress may be, it's still wreaking havoc on each of our individual physical, emotional, mental, spiritual systems.
Yes.
So because we've normalized it, we've stopped working to heal that, which means every one of us is literally suffering energetically, physically, emotionally from that.
And going back to your previous point, they're seeking to just manage it.
Yes, exactly. Stress
How
management.
are you managing
yes.
your stress?
Yes.
Oh, I'm Netflixing. I'm binge watching Netflix. I'm overeating. I'm being so busy. I'm managing it.
Yeah.
But it's still there. It's still
Of
running
course.
the person's life.
Of course. Yeah. And so I asked Swamiji about it. I asked him about fear. And he says, you fear because you don't trust.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the first time I had given him my story. It was the first time that we had had any kind of conversation, not surrounded by lots of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I give him my story. Here's what I've been through. And he looks at me and he says, are you going to take that to the grave?
I remember you told me that.
I was 25. And I was like, no. And he said, so are you going to give it up on your deathbed? And I said, no. He said, so maybe you'll give it up a month before you die? A week before you die? And I said, God, no, I'm in process. I'm working through it, you know. I'm working with a lot of different therapists, and I'm going to eventually work through this and the process. And he looks at me and he says, you're waiting for someone to draw the line for you. You're waiting for someone to come in and say, you can be done.
Mm-hmm.
He said, no one will. It's up to you.
Mm-hmm.
You can carry this to your grave, you can take it to your deathbed, or you can let it go tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I said, tonight?
Ooh.
And he said, yes. He said, we have this beautiful ceremony called the Arti, which I had actually already seen. I just didn't know what it was called. And he said, after the Arti, go into Ganga, stand in the river, and offer all of your pain, all of your anger, to the goddess Ganga, to the river. She will take it. And I remember thinking afterwards, rivers don't sweep away this type of trauma.
Right.
And I had this very overeducated arrogance about process.
Right.
And finally, I thought sometime early evening, I thought, all right, I know this isn't going to work. Obviously, it's not going to work. Rivers don't just sweep away these sorts of problems. And yet, out of respect for this being who suggested it, for this revered being who suggested it, I'm at least going to walk through the motions with sincerity. Mm-hmm. That was all I committed to, was just that I would stop mocking it and I would be sincere. I knew it wasn't going to work, but I at least would be respectful and sincere out of respect and reverence for Swamiji. So I walk into Ganga and I did exactly what he said. I took the water in my hands, and into that water I tried to pull from within me every bit of anger, of pain, of stories, of moments, of memories, and offer it into that water and then into the river. And I stood there until I could see his face in front of me. and say, I forgive you. And really mean it.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And I stood there, I have no idea how long it was, but I prayed and I cried and I prayed and I cried and gave it to the river. And the overeducated aspect of my academic brain thought later on, oh, that didn't really happen. Like, I'm sure it's going to come back. I'm sure that was just a temporary high experience you had. And I can tell you, 27 years later, it never came back. It was
free.
Gone.
That's freedom.
It was gone.
Mm-hmm.
She took it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so extraordinary because along with the pain and the anger, she took that identification with it.
Mm-hmm.
So where my self-identity had been, I am the one to whom these things happened.
And I'm a survivor of it.
I'm a survivor of it, exactly. I went from being a victim to a survivor, but either way, it was I'm the one who this happened to.
Right.
That dissolved.
Right.
It no longer was my self-identification. And that was just the most extraordinary experience to realize, as I know you teach all the time, so powerfully. We are not that which was done to us. We are not our experiences. We are not the limitations of our mind.
Right.
And to actually be able to be free of that has been such a blessing, and it's been something that I feel so blessed to be able to have helped bring other people to that place, because when we're so stuck with who we think we are, you know, we pray for grace, and yet we've just stopped up.
We're blocking the grace.
The channel, exactly.
Because grace is a total givingness, no judgment, total givingness of the Spirit. And then we argue for our limitations based on our limited personality, and we won't accept the grace.
Yeah.
Because we think that either somebody has to pay for what's happened to us, there has to be some kind of revenge, some kind of human justice, or the ego will fight for that identity and the protections and the coping mechanisms and the defense mechanisms that it has created to live, rather than, as you're talking about, you know, accept the grace, accept who you are, be free. Yeah. It's possible.
But isn't it amazing how stuck we get?
Yes. And then people develop communities around their stuckness, their friendships, their conversations, and it feels okay because we have all of these people that are in agreement with that aspect of our personality that was hurt, and then we just stay stuck together. You know, and but spiritual communities are about spiritual liberation, about freedom. Yeah, we baptized ourselves in the Congo together. I think I'll show pictures of it during this podcast. Those were great moments. It's almost wordless, the joy and the ecstasy and the
freedom.
The freedom that occurs with strong, as you were, intentionality. I mean, sincerity, but intentionality and sincerity. You know, I want to ask you, what would you say to people that are having a struggle with what their soul is calling them to be or to do, and then their society's demands on us? You know, people are battling with that, being curated by society, or even parents, and then there's something within them.
Yeah, it is a huge struggle.
Yeah.
And I think this is really where we have to take a big picture view of things. For me, it's always really helpful to think, okay, on my deathbed, how am I going to feel about this or that?
Yeah.
And I have yet to ever hear from anyone directly or of anyone who on their deathbed said, God, I wish I had conformed to society more. God, I wish I had spent more time making the neighbors jealous. God, I wish, or happy, right? Either way. Or, God, I wish that I just had, gone with the crowd a little bit more. What you hear all the time is, God, I wish I had had the courage.
Yeah.
To listen to my heart. I wish I had had the courage to follow my path. And I think what's really important is a lot of us rebel against what the family says or what parents say, not because we are actually proactively being called in a different direction, but just because we are pushing that away. And I think it's very important to recognize we need to walk toward our Dharma, toward our purpose, by simply rebelling against that which my parents want me to do. I'm just as stuck as if I do exactly what they say to do.
Right.
And a lot of us mistake freedom for rebellion.
Right.
And it isn't.
Right.
Either way, I'm making choices based on what they say.
Right.
And so what I would tell...
It's not a call. It's not an answer to a call. It's just a rebellion to something.
Exactly.
It's a reaction to something rather than a yielding to something higher.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so what I would encourage people, first of all, is really tune in and ask yourself, what are you being called toward? Not what are you trying to push away?
Yeah.
Because as you say, that's just reaction, and we are not here on earth to just react. And whether it's not to just react to our device that beeps and bings and blings and vibrates and whatnot, or whether it's to what people say. But really, what are you being called toward, first of all? Second of all, realize that no one who has ever existed has come onto earth with the Dharma, the purpose of fulfilling someone else's agenda.
Right.
Or protecting someone else from having to experience challenging emotions.
Right.
That's not the Dharma or purpose that any of us come onto earth with.
Right.
Now, obviously, we practice compassion and we practice loving kindness and we do our very best to bring and to share love and peace and kindness, metta. But that doesn't mean that we forsake our purpose on earth, because in order to embody it would force someone else, typically a family member or society as a whole, to have to go through an uncomfortable shift.
Right.
As I break out and live a different path.
That's their responsibility.
It's their responsibility. And, if they don't learn it this time, they're going to have to come back and learn it next time anyway. I mean, I know when I decided to move to India, it wasn't easy for my parents.
Right.
They had an agenda.
Right.
My mom particularly, an agenda of what my life was going to look like. And
it's all curated out.
The number of babies I was going to pop out and what she was going to dress them in and, all of that. And me being a monastic renunciant was just not part of
her
the
agenda.
vision.
Right.
And yet it was really clear to me that my highest purpose in life, as much as I wanted to bring her happiness and joy, but that I wasn't put on earth to fulfill her agenda or to protect her from having to work through what it's like when the people around you don't dance according to your tune.
Absolutely.
And what I can tell you also with her is the change that she had to go through in order to come to terms with the decision that I made, actually I think was one of the most profoundly healing things that she's ever had to do. So don't think that you're actually serving someone by protecting them from learning the lessons that karmically they need to learn.
Yeah.
So
by playing small.
Exactly.
By not being yourself.
Exactly. It limits you and it also limits them.
Right.
So we're here to embody our Dharma. And it doesn't always mean that it's going to be different than what society says.
But we're not arriving to, as you're saying, to capitulate to the status quo.
Exactly.
No one says, I'm going to go and stay within the guidelines of the status quo, because as individual expressions of this infinite, ever-expanding presence, we're here to actually not only break free from the status quo, but to change it.
Absolutely.
According to our Dharma, to our pattern, our energetic gifts that we get to share with the world. We actually change the status quo, so the world becomes different.
Yes.
Doesn't mean we become famous or become a celebrity, but the world actually becomes different because we're becoming ourselves.
Absolutely. And the ripples of that ripple out
Right.
and impact others, and also create space for others to be themselves.
Right.
And rather than sacrifice, quite literally, our lives.
Right.
Our joy, yes. Our peace, yes. Our freedom, yes. But also our very lives on the altar of this status quo, which is what so many of us do.
I see it. I'm thinking of a couple of people that I know right now, and they have what you described at the beginning of our conversation. They have the degrees, they have the wife, the husband, they have all the things, and they're living within this, what people would look at and say, well, that's a very sweet life. But I can see, as I look at them, I can see the tension within themselves of living a curated status quo life.
Yep.
And not really, I don't know what their Dharma is, but I can tell that they have fit themselves into a pattern of safety rather than, and I'm not telling anybody to break out, to do anything, but I can see it. And I can see it oftentimes in their, when they explode or when they have a bout of frustration about something. It's not really about the thing they're frustrated about. It's about the fact that they're not living full out their Dharma.
They're stuck in a cage.
They're stuck in this cage, and the cage looks really good. They have the 3 kids, they have the house, they have the degree, they have the good job, but they're not happy.
And the only way to that happiness is to actually live your purpose and live your Dharma. And before you ask your next thing, I just wanted to highlight something that you said that I think is so important, which is that as we live who we really are in our truth, we actually bring about change in the world.
Yeah.
And that is critical, because a lot of people ask me, and I imagine you get similar questions of how can you, on the one hand, believe in, pray to, have faith in the perfection of the divine, the absolute perfection of the divine, and yet at the same time spend all of your time working for feeding the hungry, educating the illiterate, kids and sick people and hungry people and women and the environment and whatever it may be. And for me, it seems so acutely clear that perfection of the universe requires each of us to fully embody perfectly what we are here on earth to do, that it's not perfection minus you.
Right.
Each of us standing up and embodying that purpose is a perfect and critical part of the perfection of the universe. So it's not, well, the universe is already perfect, therefore I'm just going to sit on the couch and eat potato chips and watch soap operas because, hey, the universe is perfect.
Everything is perfect.
Me crying when I see poor people, or feeling full of anger to see discrimination and inequality and violence, and that energy that rises in me, that energy is perfect. That becomes the energy of initiative and creativity and action. Right. That is a perfect part of the perfection of the universe, that perfection is manifesting through us.
Right.
In the tears at the hunger, in the waves of energetic anger that says, do something. And that is perfect.
You become the fiat, the exclamation point of the embodied perfection in your action. It's right action.
Yes.
You know? And without judgment, you have compassion for what you see, but then you become a vibrational answer when you feed. You
Yes.
build a school. When you change the lives or by creating a different condition for the young people to grow up in. So instead of saying, yeah, the universe is perfect, or why does God create such devastation in people's life, which is another kind of question that people ask. You say, how can I be an answer? Mm-hmm. Which is the perfection of God in you, as you, this expanded nature, being an answer in someone's life. That totally, and you've seen this because I've been with you in Rishikesh, with the schools, with the girls, just the condition you create changes the trajectory of someone's life.
Yes.
They go from 12, 13 years old, could be married off, at 13.
Yeah.
And you have this school in which, these girls are learning yoga, they're learning all kinds of skills, and very importantly, they're learning that they're important, that they matter, that there's a lot of self-love and appreciation. And the total trajectory of their life changes, which changes their family dynamic, which changes the kids that they're going to have, changes everything. Everything. Yeah. So instead of asking why does this exist, you ask a different question. How is my Dharma going to affect the lives of these beings?
Yes.
And then it does.
Yes.
I was recently at an event in Miami, and all these people came up to me. I'd never seen them, never met most of them, but they'd been following me for years. And one man, when he saw me, he just fell on his knees and started crying and said, I was homeless. I was in prison. I saw you in the movie called The Secret. I followed you. I saw that you were plant-based. I became plant-based. I saw you. I read your books. He said today, and he described his life today, which is he's a great servant. He has beautiful businesses. He's helping so many people. He says, I never thought I would meet you, and I never knew this man, but my life affected him. I never met him. I don't know. I can't even tell you what his name is right now.
Doesn't matter.
Even though I have his card.
Yeah.
But when you do what you do, you probably don't even have any idea the lives that you've affected, and the lives that they've affected, and the lives that they've affected, by asking a more empowering question, about perfection and how that can come through you. And I witnessed it, you with Guruji, I was very inspired when I went with you to the schools and how you're, I came back. It's like, okay, we got to do more. We have to do more here,
Well, it's such a blessing. I think about it like if you trip and you fall, and you injure your right leg, your left leg is going to take up extra weight.
Yeah,
we call that limping.
Yeah.
But no one ever says, oh, great humanitarian left leg, would you mind taking up some extra weight? And the left leg isn't waiting to get some kind of humanitarian award or sticker or whatever it may be. It does it because it recognizes that the right leg is self. And if a week after tripping, you end up with a headache or food poisoning or your back goes out, the body's going to keep responding. It never says, you know what, enough. Like, I did the hurt right leg, I did the headache, I did the food poisoning. Back, no, come back next month.
Right.
It just keeps responding because it understands it's all self.
Right.
And for me, that's what this service has really been about, is it's not, us as the humanitarians over here serving those over there who need it, the women, the children. It's, wow, through them, I've been given this extraordinary opportunity to see myself, my capital S self, in them as them. And
there's no other.
There is no other. And yet it's so easy to think that there is another and to forget that. And this opportunity of service for me is just as powerful as my eyes closed, cross-legged, seated meditation experiences of oneness.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is an experience that you have within, and it moves outward. This is from the out into the inner. There is no difference.
No separation. It's
just one. And to see the self in them is so exquisite and such a gift. And I feel so blessed to be able to serve them.
Yeah. You the two words, service, and then there's obviously meditation. You mentioned both those words. And people, what would you say? We've covered a lot of material, but very quickly, people are seeking to start their meditation practice. They're trying to find peace in the midst of conflict, in the midst of what we talked about earlier, the normalization of fear and worry and doubt. What would you say right now?
So I would definitely recommend what we think of as a traditional meditation practice, as in you're sitting down, your eyes are closed, you are focusing on stilling the craziness of the mind. So whether it's by bringing the awareness to your breath, whether it's by focusing on a word or a mantra or a prayer, whether it's an open-eyed meditation on a candle flame or a beautiful image or a tree or a sunset, but something that pulls you out of the superficial waves on the ocean and that brings you into connection with the depth, the unchanging space between the thoughts, the presence of the one who is aware that you are aware, that you are aware, that you are watching your breath. That brings you into contact with the self who is not stressed, who didn't just fail an exam, who didn't just get fired from a job, who didn't just find out that their spouse is cheating on them, that connects you with that. And from that, when you stand up from that meditation cushion, that awareness stays with you. And so I think it's really important throughout the day to have reminders.
Yes.
Because it's so easy to feel that in the meditation in the morning and then go out in the day and,
you start the day off one way.
Half-life isn't nearly long enough. And you come back in the evening and you think, my God, how did I lose it during the day? And so I always encourage people to have reminders.
Yeah.
And I know for me, the easiest thing to do is just food and drink. So before you have a sip of water, before you take food, just a moment of reconnecting. But it could be anything. It could be before you check your inbox. It could be before you turn the ignition in a car. It could be
before you walk into a meeting.
Anything. Just a moment.
Yeah.
Just a moment of reconnection with who you are that is not the role you're playing in the moment.
Yes.
Who you are that isn't the mask, that isn't the script, that isn't the story. That is one with the perfection of the universe.
Yes.
That was never born, that will never die.
Never die.
That perfection of the universe. And it's a moment. You know, Swamiji always says when you first build a house and you lay all of the electrical wires, it takes a long time and a lot of effort. But once that's all done and you just need to plug in the lamp, it's just a moment.
Right.
And so when we start the practice, there's definitely the time and the energy going into establishing the practice and the experience.
Yes.
But then it's a moment of just reconnection. Yes. It's like once you're in love with someone,
right,
and you've got that connection, you just look at them and you're there. You don't have to court them all over again.
Right, right. Tell the folks how they can, we covered a lot of material. I didn't get to any of the questions.
Sorry.
No. I'm saying that they all got involved in our conversation.
Okay, good.
I didn't have to be so specific. Just the conversation with you was great. The two things I want you to do. How they can just find you and give them an invitation to the International Yoga Festival.
So they can find me online at Sadhviji, sadhviji.org is my website. Mm-hmm. There's a YouTube channel that's also Sadhviji and an Instagram page that's Sadhviji. They can get my book,
right.
The latest one, which is my memoir called Hollywood to the Himalayas. And there's actually a website for the book that's hollywoodtothehimalayas.com. And it's the story of both my physical journey from Hollywood, quite literally, to the Himalayas via Palo Alto. But more importantly, it's the journey of a mindset shift for everyone, from suffering to the end of suffering, from the identification of what I call the Hollywood way of thinking, which is you are your body, its size, its shape, its color, its bank account, its role, its title, it's all of these things where we suffer because we're never enough.
Right.
And there's all the competition and there's all the anxiety, to the Himalayan way of thinking, which says you have a body, but you're not the body.
Right.
You are the soul, the spirit, the essence, the consciousness. So I would love for everyone to read the book, to go on that journey in your own heart, in your own mind, regardless of where your body is, and come home to Rishikesh, to Parmarth Nikathan. We host this beautiful international yoga festival every year, the 8th to the 14th of March. Our beloved Reverend Michael will, by God's grace, be with us this year again. And so many embodiments and channels of yoga, both that which we do with our body, that which we do with our breath, and that which transforms our minds and our hearts and our way of moving through the universe. So that's internationalyogafestival.com.
Beautiful. I know you have enjoyed our conversation. You can hear what she said, but if you're sensitive, you can hear underneath the words that were being said. They are transformative. Have a beautiful day. Blessings to you again, and this is our moment of meditation. As you know, for those who have been following for any length of time, meditation is our foundational practice at the Agape International Spiritual Center, and all the courses that we have, and everywhere that I go to teach around the world. Meditation is a part of what we practice, regardless of what I'm speaking about. And as Sadhviji reminded us during our particular conversation, it's extremely important. So we're going to have a moment of meditation. I would invite you to stop where you are. Be still to the best of your ability. Today, let's put our thumb and forefingers together. Place it on our lap facing upward as a sign of receptivity. Thumb and forefinger as a mudra, as a reminder to transcend the perception of ego. And we turn within. That is, we extract our attention from the external world. We establish an intention. Our intention is to be free, to wake up from the dream of separation from life, from the presence of God, which is love, beauty, intelligence, a presence that's never an absence. We notice that the body's temple is breathing. We notice that this breath is happening presently. This breath is not happening in the past. This breath is not happening in the future. This breath is happening presently. So as we're noticing this breath, we are being present. And in this present moment, exercising dominion over the attention, embracing our intention to be free, to wake up to our intrinsic freedom, being aware of the breath, we are staying present with our intention. If the mind wanders, or you get caught in mind chatter, or projection into the past or future, come back to the breath. Feel the feeling tone of your intention and begin again. You don't try to stop the mind chatter. You don't try to stop or quiet the mind. You just become aware the chatter is there. As you're becoming more and more aware that you are aware, that you are aware, that you are awareness. The body temple, the mental body, the emotional body, even the sounds in the room are just passing through your awareness, but they are not who you are. They are not what you are. You are awareness. So we allow our attention to come back to right here and right now. Slowly open up our eyes. Become aware that we just took a pause that refreshes. A pause for the cause, with the capital C, the source of all creation. Now walk into your day with the full awareness that all of the presence is right where you are. And take some pauses throughout the course of the day. Breathe and ask yourself, what quality of life do I want to experience now? And then give yourself permission to bring it into that meeting, into that conversation, into that long or short ride. You begin to seize the day to have the experience that you desire. Have a beautiful day. Take back your mind. I've received some beautiful letters regarding Take Back Your Mind podcast. I want to thank you for those, not only the letters, but the texts and the emails. And some of you have said, how can we support Take Back Your Mind? Well, you can support Take Back Your Mind by, one, supporting the sponsors. The main sponsor is the Agape International Spiritual Center. You can go to agapelive.com and you can go to that website and see all of the activities that this community provides. I have taught for years that spiritual community grants one immunity from the lower frequencies of life. So you can see the classes in our university. You can see a page where you can actually donate to the Agape International Spiritual Center, thus supporting the main sponsor of Take Back Your Mind. Plus, you may find many things in the community that you want to participate in. I'll be traveling again and taking people to Egypt and other places around the world. There are classes. You can see where I'm speaking around the world and around the nation. So go to agapelive.com, support the sponsor that supports Take Back Your Mind. Secondly, the other sponsor is neutralrise.com. If you go to neutralrise.com, and there's those 3 lines up there, hit those lines and you'll find Adaptozen. Adaptozen are my products. The superfoods greens, 47 different alkaline producing plant-based ingredients with adaptogens, along with probiotics, prebiotics, and digestive enzymes. All of this in one scoop. Teenagers love it because they think they're drinking something really like forbidden, but it's actually really, really good. There's no sugar added, but it tastes really, really good. And then we have the vitamin D3K2 in a bit of organic MCT oil and olive oil. So the bioavailability of your vitamin D and your K2 goes straight into the bloodstream. It's really good for, obviously, your immune system, enhancement of your mood, and just overall health. That's how you can support Take Back Your Mind while you are supporting your own health and well-being. Have a beautiful day. Your time is very valuable, so I want to thank you for lending us your ear and participating in Taking Back Your Mind. If you want to submit a question for the question of the week, please submit it to podcast@michaelbeckwith.com. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, please submit a review and let us know your thoughts. Stay on top of current episodes by subscribing to the podcast so that you'll receive alerts and not miss one single episode. And feel free to share this podcast with all of your friends and family. And until we meet again, take back your mind, and you will take back your life. Peace and blessings.